Hello, welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorraine. Welcome one and all. Today I'm going to do something that I did. It's part two of something I did way back. Let's see. It was in October 2021. I did a video on books that don't crush your soul, part one. So it's time for me to do part two. It's been 22, yeah. It's been about 16 months or so. So this started with my sister and I. She was out in Vancouver, and not Vancouver, but in that neighborhood, and COVID, and so she was only able to order books. She couldn't go into a local bookstore, so she asked for some book recommendations that were challenging, interesting, but that would not leave her in a fetal position of despair upon finishing the books. So I'll try and figure out how to link that above or below, and so that you can click on it if you like. There's some very nice book recommendations there. And re-watching the video in order to remember which books I recommended, it reminds me that the author of Anxious People, Frederick Blackman, is someone who I'd really like to get back and reread, or see what's new and cooking. Okay, so I have a number of things. They're mostly adult this time. I think last time I recommended one middle grade reader and one that was sort of all ages. I felt so this time round I have a graphic novel, and it's Vulnerability is My Superpower, and Underpants and Overbites collection. And this is from Jackie Davis. She's from sort of New York, New Jersey, that kind of neighborhood. And this is the first book that I have purchased off of her. And at the moment, I don't think she has another one on the go, but she's pregnant, so I don't know how long it'll take, but she's been quite busy. Now, okay, the glare of the light. So she's got these fun comics, and they are of her life, her conversations with her husband. She was a barista, and that wasn't working, so she decided to go out on her own and become a comic. Now that one's supposed to be out of focus because she's out of focus. So this one is kind of about finding her superhero within herself, and she's the kind of person who will say something, okay, what am I going to accomplish today? Laundry. No, I'm fooling myself. Reading. And so she's just got this lovely sense of the day. She's lovely sense of the proportions. And she's always very cheerful in her comics, and she does explore feelings of despair or self-doubt or anxiety, and but they're just very lovely, and that's a self-portrait right there. So give you a sense of how she sees her life, and she's pretty unapologetic about the patched clothes. So I love this. I've given it to a couple of friends, and they've really enjoyed it. And it's one that I keep beside my bedside table. I have not actually read all of it. I've just been kind of doing little sections at a time, but it's sweet enough that it's not just sweet, it's also challenging, so that I can go back to things, and they're a bit like those challenge cards that you can pull out, and it will maybe say, have a picture of a flower that says understanding, and then understanding is the prompt for the day, where you'll try and just use that as a thinking reflection prompt. So her comics are just four square, and quite often I will think about whatever she's encouraged me to think about. That's not her intention, that's my intention. Okay, another one that I picked up probably 2 years ago is The Adventures, oh, sorry about the light, pause, unpause. I didn't realize the light was so glitchy. Okay, this is Miss Petifour, and Her Adventures, written by Anne Michaels with illustrations by Emma Block. And it's a combination of text and little illustrations. There you go. Sorry, well, the light is still kind of crappy. I'm not going to move again because it is so nice to be sitting here in the sunshine that you're just going to have to not enjoy it with me. Anyhow, Miss Petifour is a baker, adventurer, cat lover, reader, stamp collector, and storyteller. She multitudinous cats in this episodic beg to be reading aloud illustrated chapter book. So it's has reminiscence of Mary Poppins and Pippi Longstocking, and it reminds me of Miss Lupin. That was the lady who planted lupins all along the eastern seaboard where she lived, and that's one of the reasons the myth is that we have so many lupins on places like Nova Scotia and Maine. So again, I kind of think this is above ages because it's got that graphic quality, but the story is charming, that children will get it, but I think also adults will like to just sit back and enjoy. And she does have 1 page or 2 pages. 2 pages dedicated to portraits of her cats. So, okay. The next one I've got is one that I'm going to recommend for a certain kind of reader. Now, I reviewed this one before and I didn't finish it. The Tides of Time, a Nova Scotia book of seasons. This is this is a book that I didn't finish, and mostly because I had expectations going into it, and that was my mistake. If I had just picked it up and just went with the flow, I'm sure it would have been just fine. But I picked it up for Nonfiction November, and it's talking about a book of seasons that gives vivid portraits of contemporary laborers whose harvest mark the rhythms of the seasonal years. The book consists of 12 monthly chapters, each of which tells the story of a labor unique to that month, that are also unique to this particular environment of Nova Scotia. And I didn't feel it delivered that. I got to about February, and it's very much memoir. It's very much conversation of the author and the people that she's visiting, a beekeeper or chicken and eggs or maple syrup. And so it's much more memoir, and it is also a naturalist's look at the weather, not so much the animals or the birds or what have you, but just sort of the broader scopes of things. I thought it was a fairly lightweight naturalist writing book. She is a professor up at St. Yves, and I don't know what she teaches. It just says she teaches there. And it did win second prize for a local nonfiction writers event. So I like it. I don't want to like send you down a trail of huge expectations, but if you're looking something that's just, easy to read, quiet, reflective, a little bit funny, this is a nice option. Now, this one I have mentioned to you guys sometime in the past. So, Shadows. Lark Rising to Candleford by Flora Thompson. This is a book that's sort of a bucolic naturalist. I don't really know what it's called. It's a memoir of the land. It's a memoir of a time in the land and a piece of the land, and we get to see certain families as they're born and raised in this environment, and both how the land is thriving but also how the land is changing as we get creeping industrialization. So the family is initially in the farm fields of Candleford, and they move to a local community that has some amount of industrialization, and the girl, I believe, goes into service for a local richer person, and then the third book, I'm not entirely sure, but again, it's one that's beside my bed, and it's one that I pick up when I'm just looking for some easy chapters to read. I did read the first 300 pages. The first part was called Lark, and I read that through. I quite enjoyed it. The family was not the main part of the storyline. It's really about community and land, and I think as we get to the second and the third part, we're starting to see the family develop relationships, not just amongst themselves, but with fellow urban dwellers. Woo! There's a little bit of Taz. Woo! I liked it. It's soft. It's lyrical. It's linear in a seasonal kind of a way. There isn't any high drama. There's just a really nice sense of being on a long walk with the land. Okay. Another book that I'd like to recommend, and which I'll have to put a picture up here or here, is called Baker's Guide to Defensive Baking, and I'll have to add in the author. And it's classified as a middle grade book, but a lot of adults have read it, and it's called in the genre of cozy science fiction. And I thought I'm wrong. Cozy fantasy. And I think this is a building genre where people, would like to read about a world that's already been built. So I've got one that's a better example coming up, but this is a magical community, and there's a tribulation, of course, and that because there's a defensive guide, there's obviously some kind of conflict, but the protagonist is older and her magic is contained to baking. And so how is her baking going to help the city in any kind of a way? There's been disappearance of magical people, and so the defense mechanisms for the city are becoming weakened. Is it an inside job? Is someone managing to get over the defensive walls and somehow scoop these people? It has a nice mystery to it. It has a really nice solution. I don't think anybody dies. I'm pretty sure nobody dies. And I think there's probably more flour spilt than there is blood, so that's kind of fun. Maybe someone does die in the very beginning. Anyhow, it's a pretty non-dramatic in terms of violence book. The questions that the main protagonist has to think about is, is this really magic that I have here, that I can do this with my baking, or is it a fluke? And how do I rank? Because there's always a hierarchy. How do I rank in that hierarchy of successful mages or witches or what have you? And how is this going to be of any use to anybody? Because you can tell by the cover that her magic has something to do with gingerbread men, and these gingerbread men are somewhat animated. So, if she bakes gingerbread cookies, can you eat them? So it's fun, and I think despite where it is located on the library shelves, I think it's a strong book. It'd make a great family read, and it would just make a great, to me, it would make a great plain book, because it's the kind of book that's moving along fairly quickly, the protagonists and the side characters are all fairly well established, and the dilemma is fairly well established quickly. And the ending, I think you start to get a sense of the ending maybe a little bit sooner than we would if this was written for adults, but I don't think that's a hardship. I really enjoy it. And I think it would make a great gift, because my prediction is you will enjoy it so much, you will know somebody else who will just get a kick out of it. Okay, the next one is A Guide to the Birds of East Africa, a novel by Nicholas Drayson. I truly adored this book. I've reviewed it once before. I gave it high praise. And it's the story of Mr. Malik, who is a bird watcher. And in his bird watching habits, he has come across a bird guide whose name is Rose Mbakwe. And she talks to him, but I don't think she realizes his enchantment with her. And so another person comes into Mr. Malik's life, who is from his past, who's what would you call it, like the antithesis of Mr. Malik. He's just everything that Mr. Malik is, this other guy is not. So somehow, although Mr. Malik is a very gracious, sort of retiring type of individual, he gets himself embroiled in a birdwatching contest, and whoever sees the most birds that they've never seen before gets to win a contest, and the contest is asking Miss Rose Mbakwe if she will attend a banquet, and this is one of those special banquets. This is taking place in Kenya. It's post-colonialism, and there are still some cultural things that happen that are as a result of colonialism. So that, for instance, there's a club where the men gather, and that's where the ball is going to be. So there's still that kind of vestige of old England expatriates there. There's something else that happens in this story. It's not just about the contest. Rose Mbakwe is also having a small dilemma of her own, and sort of a crisis of where does she want her life to go, unaware that these two men are vying for her attention. So there becomes a very nice little play, waltz, let's say, of different people's needs and aspirations. Now, a friend of mine, her comment about this was that the trouble that people go to see birds is ridiculous. And I thought, oh, she didn't watch that movie about bird watchers a couple of years ago where everybody was on planes and trains and trying to bird spot, and once you'd seen the bird, you checked it off your list, you registered it, and trot back off to, I don't know, Cook's Islands or something like that. Got to get the next one. Some people spend a huge amount of money and energy finding birds, but not so Mr. Malik. He's pretty clever in how he approaches the competition. So this is also a wonderful book. This one has been talked about a fair bit on BookTube. It's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I have looked to see whether there are others, but as of the moment, there aren't. This is what has been classified as a cozy sci-fi. It was published in 2022, so it's a little too early for Travis to have written another book. So we've got the main character is the orc, and her name is Viv. And sort of a secondary main character is this young lady here. I think her name's Tyla, and she is a siren, one of the people that can use her voice and her eyes to entice people into love and doing things that they don't want to. But she's tired of that lifestyle. She wants to just be able to live an authentic lifestyle. And Vivian, as you can see from her muscles and stuff, she is someone who was a very successful warrior, and she was, at a certain point in her career, an assassin, a paid assassin. So she saved all this money, and while she was in one town where there were goblins, she encountered lattes, coffee, lattes, macchiatos, all that. And she's got a dream to open up her own cafe. So she's decided that the city of Thun is just the place to do it. She manages to get a magical item that's going to help with all of this. And it's fairly straight ahead from there. She encounters people in the community. She's building new family. There's, of course, a conflict point. Then there's another conflict point that comes in. They seem to be not connected there's a solution that's fairly clever that involves the mob boss, and then there's a catastrophe, and how are they going to recover from this catastrophe? And again, it's where family found family just comes forward and just really helps each other come to meet their dreams. And in the process of one group of people helping an individual meet dreams, that group is also experiencing those meeting individual dreams of their own. So it's a very happy story. I think it's not laugh out loud riot. It wasn't quite as funny as I thought it was going to be, but it is charming and really a relaxing read. And I think sort of a nice, you get these layer cakes and everything's very, pecan and walnut, and then you get this surprising apricot in the middle. This is sort of an apricot in the middle of a cake. What's that called? Center. This book, I'm not too sure how easy it's going to be for people to get. I had to special order it in from the British Library Women's Writers. I first found this in our local bookstore, but they didn't continue with it for too long, or the series. And I know I can order it in if I want to, because I think there's 2 more that I still want to get from this series. The title is Tea is So Intoxicating by Mary Essex. Now, I thought it was hilarious. Now, I've been told my sense of humor needs to smarten up. We've got David, who is a stick in the mud. Probably all of you have a stick in the mud in your life somewhere, but David is particularly sticky in his stickiness, and not too bright, even though he has been involved in the military in a officer's capacity, and you just think, oh my God, like, how did he pass the exams? Anyhow, he ended up working for like a company that had, let's just pretend, Tim Hortons. He would have been in the upper offices sorting out Tim Horton needs and so on. So this company closes, and he decides he knows everything. I'm just going to try and, no. He decides that as a result of having run the numbers for some of these franchises, he knows everything there is to know about running a donut shop. And lo and behold, unsurprisingly to absolutely no one, and never to himself, he has no idea. So he takes his new wife, who's had an interesting backstory, and they go to a small town, and everything's on the surface seems like it could be a success. Except for David. David manages to railroad just about everything. I don't think there's really a single decision that he makes that makes any load of sense. So he has his friends and his wife and his wife's daughter and his wife's ex-husband all in the background. And he's trying to make this tea house a go of it. And he's kind of the sad schmuck that everybody circles around. I think they try initially to just be, they try to be helpful. They try to be encouraging. There's advice given, but he's just kind of rock solid in his schmuckness. So people start to realize, this is a sinking ship. And so the last half of the book is sort of dealing with what do you do when you're in a sinking ship. I don't think that's too much of it's a bit of a spoiler, but yeah. I think the back of the book kind of gives that away a little bit. Well, I laughed quite a bit. There was some of the responses to David and his decisions were pretty much a hoot. His stepdaughter is just incorrigible. He's managed to come across a Slovenian woman who is a cake baker, but she says she can bake everything, bread and cupcakes and cookies and so on, but just bakes more cakes. There's just so many funny characters around him, and his lack of perception of reality is quite amusing too. So yeah, I think this is a really strong book, probably the strongest of the books I've read from this series. So I believe It's the British Library, and I can probably put the ISBN number in the information below so that if you're interested, it's easier for you to get hold of. But I have been reading my way through some of the other books, and so far this is my top one. Okay, well that's it for me. I'm sure there are other books out there, but not in my stack. I've either had like really good books, but they've really kind of pushed emotional limits, or they've pushed that sort of feeling in your throat of, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not there. You know, that kind of train wreck thing where everybody's life is going to hell, and you're reading about it, watching it, and it's really fascinating. And so, yeah, it's a good book, but it's not the kind of book that you're just going to want to relax with and think, that was a positive experience. So I think all of those books are a positive experience. Well, that's it for me. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.